In the summer of 1593, the air within London's Greenwich Palace was devoid of its usual perfumed elegance. Instead, it carried the briny, damp scent of the Atlantic. A woman in her 60s, her skin weathered by salt and her hair a crown of silver, stood with a spine as straight as a mast before the Virgin Queen, Elizabeth I, then at the zenith of her power. She did not kneel, nor did she bow her head. Instead, she met the gaze of the English monarch with the eyes of an equal. This was Grace O'Malley, known to the Irish as Grain Hale, the woman who made the very oceans tremble. Tonight, as the hearth fire flickers, let us journey through the true odyssey of her life. During their historic parley, Elizabeth asked her, "Are you a predator or a protector?" Grace replied with calm resolve, "In these waters, if you do not choose to fight, you choose to vanish." Her life was a voyage of survival, intrigue, and unyielding defiance. In an age when women were mere shadows of men, she etched the silhouette of her soul with iron and fire. Let us slow our pace and hear how, long before this legendary meeting, this woman held up the spine of a dynasty amidst the raging tempests. The true life of Grace O'Malley began not in a cradle, but on the morning she shorn her waist-length tresses. On the west coast of 16th-century Ireland, the O'Malleys were born to the sea, their blood coursing with an ambition thicker than the brine. The social dogmas of the time dictated that a girl's destiny lay in embroidery, prayer, and submission. The ocean was a theater reserved for men. When she pleaded to join her father's trading expeditions, she was met only with a taunt: "Your long hair will tangle in the rigging, 'tis an invitation from the reaper." Thus, in the unseen hours of daybreak, she took a blade and severed the shackles imposed upon her by the world. When she appeared on deck with shorn hair, the sheer finality of her silence commanded the awe of the roughest sailors. This was no mere act of rebellion, but an awakening of self. She understood that in this world, dignity is never a gift, but a prize to be seized. She began to master the stars, to decipher the breath of the tides before a storm, and to navigate the treacherous needles of jagged reefs. The rules of the land perished upon the waves, where only primal, unvarnished strength held sway. She ceased to be an ornament of her house and became the sharpest eye and steadiest hand upon the vessel. Grace's marriages were never mere harbors of refuge, they were springboards to power. Her first husband was the heir to the O'Flaherty clan, a man of vast lands but of volatile spirit. However, Grace swiftly proved that she could command not only war galleys at sea but also castles and infantries on land. When her husband perished in a clan feud and his enemies expected a grieving widow to retreat, Grace instead donned her battle tunic. She held the clifftop fortresses and even turned the tide, forcing the encroaching predators to pay a heavy price in blood. Yet Grace's true brilliance lay in her insight into the nature of power. In a fragmented Ireland ruled by warring lords, isolation was the prologue to death. To safeguard her domain, she entered a second marriage, less a union of hearts than a calculated political alliance. Exploiting a legal loophole, she declared a divorce after a single year of marriage, yet managed to retain control of the strategically vital Rockfleet castle. She was no fragile soul swayed by sentiment, she was a far-sighted grandmaster of the board, utilizing every available rule to stitch together the fractured tapestry of her dynasty. To dismiss Grace as a mere marauder of brute force is to underestimate the political acumen hidden beneath her salt-stained brow. At the time, England was striving to subjugate Ireland, the Tudor iron heel crushing the ancient Gaelic laws step by step. Grace's fleet was besieged by English forces, her sons cast into dungeons, and the lifeblood of her clan nearly severed. Any other might have chosen groveling supplication or the despair of the blade, but Grace chose the impossible path, a face-to-face encounter with the mistress of England. She wrote to Elizabeth I, her tone a masterful blend of humility and haughtiness, presenting herself as a grieving mother while subtly reminding the Queen of her absolute control over the western seaways. On her voyage to London, she may well have glimpsed the gallows in her mind, yet she stepped into the gilded court nonetheless. There, two women from vastly different worlds, yet both wielders of power in a kingdom of men, reached an unspoken understanding. Grace refused to speak English, conversing instead in Latin, a poignant gesture that declared, "I am not ruled by your tongue, but I respect your intellect." The twilight of Grace's life was spent in a solitude that was at once tragic and serene. She returned to her domains even as the world beyond was transformed beyond recognition, and as English law finally bled into every corner of the Irish soil. She insisted on putting to sea every day, though her palms were as gnarled as old oak bark and her back had begun to stoop under the weight of years. She watched the young sailors, in whose eyes she was no longer merely a commander, but a living, breathing totem. She had witnessed countless intrigues, buried 2 husbands, and watched her sons face life and death upon the fields of war. This profound loneliness was like a beach after the tide, smooth, silent, covering all the struggles and the din. Someone once asked her, "In this life, you have slain and you have plundered, do you not fear the judgment after death?" Grace merely offered a faint smile and replied, "I killed so that my children might live, I took so that the people of my lands would not starve. If God is a mariner, he will surely understand that to veer off course in a gale is not a sin, but an instinct for survival. Regarding the end of Grace O'Malley, history offers no precise date, only legends that echo through the straits. It is said she passed away peacefully at Rockfleet Castle around the year 1603, the very same year Elizabeth I drew her last breath. These two women, so different in nature yet intertwined by fate, seem to have made a silent pact to exit at the twilight of the same era. Grace left behind no sprawling empire or mountains of gold, she left only an eternal scripture of the sea. For centuries after her death, Irish fishermen caught in the mist would still whisper her name, praying for her spirit to guide them. Her tale was woven into ballads, sung through generations in damp taverns, and she became the personification of liberty. Yet beneath these grand labels, the real Grace was perhaps just a woman who desperately yearned to protect her home. With a primal tenacity, she resisted the crushing weight of her era and the whims of fate. Her gravestone faces the ocean, receiving the eternal baptism of the Atlantic, as if she never truly departed. The life of Grace O'Malley drew to a gentle close amidst the crashing of the Atlantic waves. We are often accustomed to deifying historical figures, yet we easily overlook the anxieties and sighs they exhaled while facing the lamplight alone in the dead of night. She was never a perfect saint, she was a real soul struggling in the mire and fighting for survival in the surge. She teaches us that no matter how harsh the environment, if you dare to shorn the hair that binds you, you can helm your own life. Just as she stood alone on those freezing nights, clutching her compass and searching for that faint, flickering lighthouse beam in the boundless dark. You too may currently find yourself troubled by the mundanities and desires of life, or perhaps feeling an inexplicable void. But pray, believe that within every heart dwells a grace, a wild, untamable force that refuses to bow to power or hardship. Tonight's story has ended, the Atlantic winds have calmed, and the world outside has hushed. Surrender your weary defenses and the problems that need not be solved tonight. May the tenacity of Grace O'Malley become the sturdiest cabin within your dreams, carrying you toward the most serene and peaceful shore.
Gut nicht, and may sweet dreams attend you until the dawn.